Hey y'all, Twana Michelle here, Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Coach and Mental Health Therapist. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about the reason you may find yourselves reenacting and recreating these harmful childhood dynamics in your adult relationships. So if you found yourself in a pattern of romantic relationships or even friendships, just drawn to people that are harmful, that are cruel, that are abusive, that are chaotic, that are really toxic, and you seem to keep ending up in these same types of relationships with a different person but a very similar story, you might want to kind of take a look at what you learned about relationships and just growing up, what you saw in your family of origin, what were those relationships like with your caregivers, what you witnessed, and also what you experienced. Because typically, if we are continuously in the same type of relationships that are unhealthy, we probably have experienced that in our own families, and we are recreating that, okay? So the first reason why we may find ourselves recreating harmful childhood dynamics in our adult relationships is that it's a trauma response. So if you grew up in a home environment where there was any type of abuse, maybe your parents were emotionally unavailable, maybe there was abandonment, if there was addiction, anything that a child either got that was harmful or didn't get that they needed that was also harmful, then that can create fear, panic, high anxiety, and also traumatization, perhaps. Not for everyone. Now, we know that some people grow up in these types of homes and they don't experience trauma. And some people do grow up in these environments and they experience trauma symptoms and may go on to repeat these patterns and have complex PTSD. So it's a trauma response. You are literally reenacting trauma, okay? Reenacting trauma is a way that our brains and our bodies try to process and heal from trauma. So we may find ourselves either doing things that were harmful to us, recreating those in relationships. For example, if you were in an environment where you felt like you were ignored and no one paid attention to you and you felt unloved, unseen, unheard, unworthy, you probably will find yourselves in relationships where there's a partner who treats you the same way. That partner is emotionally unavailable, that partner is emotionally neglectful, and you feel unseen, unheard, unloved, unworthy. But it goes beyond that. I know I'm talking about relationships with others, but also when you look at your relationship with yourself, there's also a sense of self-abandonment that tends to occur with that. Not only are we attracted to people who abandon us emotionally, but we end up abandoning ourselves. So we recreate the same experience. We recreate the same harmful dynamic as an attempt to reenact in order to reprocess and heal. And so it's not a conscious process, right? We don't choose to do this. This happens unknowingly, this happens unconsciously, and we don't even see the pattern often until we really stop and do some introspection, maybe getting to therapy where someone can help us connect the dots and help us understand how and why we are doing this. So I kind of talked about the second reason that we end up recreating these harmful childhood dynamics in our adult relationships when I mentioned an attempt to process and heal. So yes, it's a trauma response. We're reenacting this trauma, but the second part of that I mentioned already is we are trying to process and heal. So that actually kind of leads me into the third thing that I wanted to mention. We are trying to process the emotions. We are trying to integrate a lot of those traumatic memories. But the third thing here is that we are also trying to change the narrative, right? So in a sense, we are trying to redo what happened. So we are reliving it, we are reenacting it, we are re-experiencing it, but we are also trying to redo it. Because if I can't get myself in a relationship with someone, remember this is all subconscious, I'm not thinking about this consciously, but if I can get myself in a relationship with someone who reminds me of daddy, feels like daddy. Daddy was never available. Daddy was always too busy. Daddy ignored me. Daddy made me feel, unworthy, unloved. So if I can get myself in a relationship with someone like that, but I can get the opposite of that, they can validate me and they can acknowledge me and they can make me feel loved and they can make me feel beautiful and they meet my emotional needs, then that makes me feel like I'm actually getting that from daddy in a sense. Again, that is a way of processing, that is a way of healing, but that is also a way of sort of taking back some power and control over the situation that cannot be undone, redone, changed, or controlled. But it sort of feels like it. It's like, okay, if I couldn't get what I wanted from daddy, then I'm going to get it from someone like him, right? I am going to get it one way or the other. I am going to prove to myself that he was wrong about me. And I'm going to prove that to myself by finding someone who is going to treat me in the way that I felt like I needed so desperately from the person who could never give it to me. So I'm going to get someone that represents this person, that represents this relational dynamic. And I'm going to change the narrative, and the ending is going to be different, and I'm going to live happily ever after, and my trauma is going to be healed. It does not work like that, right? One would hope, but the reality is it does not. So when we are choosing people that are recreating this harmful dynamic for us, it's going to start that way and it's going to end that way. We are not going to miraculously get these people to change and to love us in the way that we want to be loved. It's just not going to happen. So I know it's an attempt to heal, it's an attempt to process and take your power back by changing that narrative, but it's not going to happen with a person who cannot give you that. Okay. And that's the most challenging and difficult and ironic part of this whole process in reenacting these harmful relationships, is that we are trying to get something meaningful, something that we so desperately need, from someone who will never be able to give it to us. And the fourth reason that we may recreate some of these harmful childhood dynamics in our adult relationships is that we are familiar with them. Familiarity and normalization is one of the main reasons we do this, okay? Yeah, a lot of this is trauma reenactment and all the stuff that I mentioned, but we also learn about relationships from what we see in our household. What was mommy and daddy's relationship like? Was daddy around? Was mommy around? What was their relationship like with you? So what did you learn about relationships? Whatever you learned became normal for you, right? Everyone has their own normal. And it also became very familiar, and it reminds you of home. So we are always going to be drawn back to home. We are always going to be attracted to what feels like home. And it doesn't matter how chaotic home was. It doesn't matter how abusive home was. It doesn't matter how dysfunctional and unhealthy home was. It's home. So we are always on some level going to be drawn to that. You have to have that awareness about yourself and get to a place where you recognize that whatever I am instinctively, innately attracted to is not good for me. That was one of the hardest things for me to do when I decided I wanted to have healthy relationships, because I had to open myself to new experiences and learn to like a different type of person. I had to learn to accept that what feels like chemistry is not healthy. It's my trauma meeting their trauma. It's a familiarity of what I experienced in my childhood that was traumatic, okay? Chemistry is not all what it seems to be. So you have to recognize that what feels familiar is going to feel attractive. And if you've had a chaotic and unhealthy home environment, then that's not a good thing, okay? We want to change that. We want to change our perception of relationships. We want to discover what a healthy relationship is actually like and not normalize or change what we consider normal in relationships. And the fifth reason we find ourselves recreating these harmful childhood dynamics in our adult relationships is that we have a negative self-perception. In other words, low self-worth, perceivingly low self-worth. So because of the things that we got that were intentionally harmful as a child, or the things that we didn't get that we needed to feel worthy and to get our emotional needs met, we did not get a chance to develop a positive self-concept. We internalized things that were happening in our environment as something being wrong with us. So we learned that we're unworthy, we're not good enough, and that became our core belief. And so sometimes, in addition to all the other reasons that I gave you about why we are reenacting this trauma, we also don't think that we deserve anything better because we don't feel worthy. And so even though on some level you may know that this person is not really good for me, but at least, let me tell you, anytime you start thinking at least, you are already shortchanging yourself. You are already in a lack mindset. You are already making decisions as a result of that core belief of not being good enough, of not being lovable, of not being worthy. All of those things that are leading you to believe that you have to settle. You don't. But you don't know that when you don't know your worth and you don't know your value, because you never got that. We learn about who we are from our primary caregivers as children. Of course, we can have traumatic experiences later in our life that can also cause us to have a negative self-concept. But we learn about ourselves in our families. And if I'm being abused in some way, then I'm going to say, well, for my own parents to do that to me, there must be something wrong with me. Can't say something's wrong with them, just for my own emotional, psychological, and even physical survival. I can't see them in that way, so it's got to be me. Or if I'm feeling ignored, I'm not getting any emotional support, I'm not getting any of my emotional needs met, I'm not getting attention and time and affection, well, I must not be worthy of it. I must not deserve it. Because my own mom and dad, why would they not give that to me if I deserved it? You're really going to have to go back and do some work, getting to the core wound, getting to the root issue, which has originated in your childhood, in your family of origin. I definitely recommend getting with a therapist to do that. I think that you really need someone to help you with that process of healing, an objective, neutral person that you can talk to, someone who can help you kind of connect the dots and help increase the insight and awareness of how you've made these decisions, and to be able to go back to the origin, to go back and see how you learned some very unhealthy and limiting beliefs about relationships and about yourself. So let me know what your thoughts are about this topic, and if you have anything that you want to add to this that I didn't mention, that you think are reasons you recreate these harmful childhood dynamics in your adult relationships. Also leave some suggestions for video topics in the comment section below, and I'll deliver on that. Share this video out with others who you think may benefit from this topic. And thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you resonate with this content and you find it helpful. And yeah, come back and watch. And I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, take care. Bye.